I guess there must be a consensus that has been reached on Star Wars: The Last Jedi. And basically, even though the critics who are paid to watch these movies and give them high thumbs up, the critics loved it. And apparently the critics all gave it a 93%, which also makes me wonder about the age of these critics. See, I'm 36, and when I was a kid, I grew up watching the Return of the Jedi. And a lot of the people who grew up in the 70s with the original Star Wars trilogy and they watched the first two movies when they were kids, a lot of those people are either old or they're not in the system anymore. A lot of these new critics are basically kids. You know, some of them younger than me, some of them my age. Many of them weren't even Star Wars fans, and they just watched them as movies. But obviously, the audience apparently didn't like the movie, or they're giving it really, really bad reviews. And I can pretty much see why that is. There were a lot of them who were polarized on the last film, Force Awakens, and they hated this one as much as they hated that one. And I can understand their point of view when you really think about it, because there was a lot of missed opportunities. There was a lot of ridiculous shit in the film. And I just want to really quickly go over a couple of things that stood out to me. The first thing is the lack of Darth Vader. Now, I apologize because I have to use these pictures. I can't use video because obviously I'll be copyright infringement flagged by YouTube. So what I can say is the lack of Darth Vader is ultimately what is killing all of the Star Wars movies. Now, granted, these movies will come out, make $500 million, and then go on to make more than $1 billion in their runtime. But the simple fact is that as films, Star Wars films at this point fall flat because Darth Vader's not in them. Now, I went and saw the movie Rogue One, and the movie progressed pretty well. It had a cast that I wasn't used to because I never really kept up with the Star Wars stories or the lore. But what really not only saved that movie, but what made that movie memorable. Now, mind you, I really don't remember much of the movie with the exception of like the last 10 minutes. What saved that movie and what made that movie stand out was when Darth Vader comes into the movie and is hacking up everybody. All those Jedi scum, not the Jedi scum, the Rebel scum, just hacking them all up, and they're all trapped in a little corridor. I think by now I'm not spoiling anything. Everybody must have seen that by now. And that pretty much made that film perfect. And it's really weird because I don't remember anything beyond the Vader scenes. I mean, I remember there was a girl. I barely remember what her name was. I remember there was some characters. I remember Ip Man was in it, but I barely remember any of the scenes. That entire movie was dominated by Darth Vader. Now, when I was a kid, I grew up watching The Return of the Jedi. And in The Return of the Jedi, it was specifically, since Empire Strikes Back, it was specifically turned into a struggle between the father and the son. And I think that's what made it the strongest. Now, most people didn't like Return of the Jedi because it ended the Darth Vader trilogy. And the problem is, without Darth Vader, these movies are dead. But I have to say, Return of the Jedi was good for what it was when it was. Now, I don't know how people would respond to the Return of the Jedi right now, but what I do know is that these movies they just don't have what they need to have without Darth Vader there. And that's the problem. The entire prequels, the first three movies, the fourth episode, fifth episode, sixth episode, all of those movies revolved around Darth Vader. And the problem is, even when they go back to the prequels like The Phantom Menace and they go to the Attack of the Clones, all of those movies revolved around the creation of Darth Vader. And even though I wasn't happy with the acting in those movies, I hated the CGI in those movies. I preferred the real puppeteering. I preferred the real fighting, not the CGI shit. The issue was that it was still a Darth Vader story. So now with this 3 trilogy sequel, because they have another episode coming, at this point Disney's bought the thing and they can make as many of these episodes as they want. You know, they can always set up a new story and somewhere else, and it could be a story about the rebellion keep on fighting. And apparently the Empire has an endless amount of cash, and they have an endless amount of money to build ships, and they have an endless amount of money to build Death Stars. But the thing about it is they can keep on making these movies. They can keep on making money because there's enough people who are locked into the emotional attachment of Star Wars. Now, the emotional attachment of Star Wars is at its strongest with that one character, Darth Vader. Me personally, I liked seeing Mark Hamill in the film. Like many other fans, I was really disappointed with the direction that they took Mark Hamill, because I'm not going to spoil it, but I think they took it in the wrong direction. And even Mark Hamill himself said that they took it in the wrong direction. And even he was disappointed. And even he's saying that it wasn't that great. And he was very disappointed with it. So the thing about it is, I mean, who am I to argue with him? But Mark Hamill's presence, Princess Leia's presence, that really didn't get me emotionally involved as much as Darth Vader's presence. And I personally like the villains, but the problem that I think that they have with these new movies is that Kylo Ren absolutely is not Darth Vader, and he cannot replace Darth Vader. The biggest mistake that they made with Kylo Ren was taking his mask off. While he was obviously extraordinarily powerful in the first movie, able to stop laser blasts in midair, the big problem with him was he was better when he was mysterious. Darth Vader's helmet didn't really come off so that you could see his face until, Return of the Jedi. When you saw him, you knew that he was human under there, but you didn't know how human he was, and you were afraid of him because he had been killing people up until the point where you actually get to see that he's a human under there. And he was shrouded in mystery. The problem with Kylo Ren is he's too much like your typical entitlement millennial at this point, and we know those people all too well. We hate them. We hate their guts at this point. Everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about. And what they've turned this into is, I'm not sure what they've turned it into. I thought that maybe Kylo Ren was related to Rey. I thought maybe they might have been sister and brother, and maybe nobody knew about it because the Force erased their memory, or I thought maybe they could have been cousins or something like that. But it appears to me that what they're trying to set up is Kylo Ren is extremely powerful on the dark side, and Rey is supposed to balance him out because there's always supposed to be a balance. But the problem is they're trying to put together like a romance between them, and the problem is they don't click well together. They just don't click. And the issue that I have, it's like I'm trying to understand, what do they want to do? Are they going to have Rey ultimately kill Kylo Ren somehow? Or are they going to have them settle down and have sex and get married and have Force children that are really, really powerful? I don't know what the direction with this guy is, and I'm not impressed with him. I'm not impressed. Now, I have to say, I was a little bit more comfortable with him in the last this last movie, the Last of the Jedi or something. I can't even barely remember its name, but I was more impressed with him in this movie than I was in The Force Awakens, and I think it was good that, you know, even Lord Snoke calls attention to the fact that he got his ass whipped by a girl who never touched a lightsaber before. I really think it was good that they said that, because it almost appears that a lot of the people who were involved in the writing, they seem to understand the fans' disappointment. But then the problem was there was so much of that fan disappointment that it looked like they were going to do something about, and then they just fell flat. A perfect example is how they handled Princess Leia. Princess Leia is now General Leia, older woman, and in real life, Carrie Fisher, who played her, died of opioid overdose, like so many other people in like parts of this country that are getting high on opioids. So anyway, at a certain point in the movie, and I don't want to spoil it, but I'm pretty sure everybody's heard about it at this point. At a certain point in the movie, I thought that they had killed her character off. And the problem was, it actually made sense that they would kill her character off in the way that I thought that they were going to kill her character off. Unfortunately, she makes an absolutely miraculous turnaround. I don't want to spoil, but it was so poorly handled that it made absolutely no sense whatsoever. And you've probably heard about it. And all I can say is that at a certain point, and we know Leia has Force powers, but the problem is the way they handled it was really bad. At a certain point, Leia is flying around like Superman through space, and I can't even make that shit up. So if you haven't seen the film yet, you know, I don't think at this point that you can avoid spoilers anymore, but at a certain point, Princess Leia is flying around like Superman, and it didn't make any sense whatsoever. It made absolutely no sense. And there was a person behind me in the theater who actually was like, what the fuck? And he stood up, he grabbed his head. And I was like, yeah, I hear you. I know exactly what you're saying, because he couldn't believe it either. He couldn't believe that they would do that to this character. And you're dealing with emotional attachment to characters. It's like you can't just have carte blanche to do silly shit in these movies. You can't do it. Now that the evils of Harvey Weinstein and President Trump have been defeated in real life, women are being empowered in movies and Hollywood like never before. Brienne of Tarth, played by Gwendoline Christie, appears in this movie, as you know, as Captain Phasma. In The Force Awakens, she added absolutely nothing to the film. I thought that in this film that they were going to make her actually add something to the film. The answer is no, they did not. They added nothing to her role. She added absolutely nothing to the film. And it was a shame how they handled her. Basically, it was a betrayal of her character, the way they handled her. And it's a shame that, you know, like there was so many directions that they could have gone, having a woman as a stormtrooper and having her in a leadership role. There was so many directions they could have gone. But at the end of the day, they basically killed her character without allowing her to add anything whatsoever to the film. And it was atrocious. I mean, the real Brienne of Tarth character, if she could find out about this, she'd probably go out on an honor killing and start killing people, anybody who had anything to do with this shit. She'd probably kill them. There were a lot of angry racists who were very upset to see that there was some type of budding relationship between the new main black character, Finn, and this female character, Rey. And that was expressed pretty clearly when they first saw the trailers. They were like, oh my God, it's a black stormtrooper. I can't believe this shit. It's ridiculous. So they were complaining about that and everything. And I guess they didn't want to see that one go any further, especially after they saw the movie Get Out. But sure enough, you know, it did. But the thing about it is, at this point in this film, what they did was they added in a Chinese female character. And it felt to me like it was okay to add her in. The problem was it felt like it was pandering to the Chinese audience. And I'm pretty sure a lot of other people will probably agree with me. It felt like she was just tacked on in order to get more Chinese viewers in China watching. And granted, you know, China's a massive populace. And when you really think about it, considering how many more Chinese people there are in the world, you know, the future of science fiction should have way more Asians in it than it has whites in it, or, you know, and that's just what it is. I mean, India has like 1.4 billion, China has like 1.4 billion, give or take. I don't have exact numbers because you got to add in like Bangladesh and all those other countries surrounding it, and then all those little areas. But Asians obviously have a major place in the future, not just of science fiction, but in the future of science in general, considering the majority of the STEM jobs are occupied by them. So I liked the relationship that they built. Unfortunately, it was like the direction that they took it. I mean, you got these two kissing in the middle of a firefight where you've got like AT-AT walkers just pointing their guns right at them and looking in disbelief like, what the fuck are these two doing? They're up here kissing on the battlefield. We're about to blow these motherfuckers away. And, you know, it just, the direction, the way they handled it was just so ridiculous. And that's the real problem. Whoever is writing these movies, it's like, I understand that it's been bought out by Disney, but for God's sakes, it's like, this is still a relatively mature film. And they're pumping it filled with nonsense, beyond nonsense. It's just incredible. In the middle of a massive life and death struggle between the rebellion and the Empire, which pretty much seemed like a curb stomp battle when you thought about it, Rose and Finn found it necessary to escape the battle and to go to a side adventure in search of something, which I'm not going to spoil for you. But the problem is the side adventure took way too long. And especially when you're dealing with this situation where you're dealing with this life and death struggle. Now, granted, if you really think about it, if they're moving around at light speed, this side adventure could have happened in mere moments in their perspective, but it could have taken a very short amount of time or a long amount of time, depending upon how far they went and what gravitational pulls they were near. Anybody who understands what I'm talking about when it comes to time dilation and general relativity, I can buy the fact that if they went on this side adventure, time stood still for the rebellion, and then they came back and they got what they needed and all this. The problem is it just went on for too long, and there was just too much use of CGI puppet characters. It looked fake. It didn't make sense. It was like there was just so many things that just didn't work. And the problem is they kept on adding on set pieces that I just felt that they didn't need to add on. And that's ultimately what hurt this movie so much. When you really look back and you look back at episode 4, 5, and 6, you can see that they had some amazing puppeteering. They had amazing special effects work. They had amazing set design. And it was all real simply because they didn't have CGI and they had to make it look real. Either that or they had to take something and make you believe in it. And that's where the strength of the original 3 films came from. That's the reason why the prequel trilogy was hated so much. It's because of the CGI. That's why the remakes of the Star Wars films suck so bad. That's why a lot of people would prefer to watch the originals rather than the remakes, rather than the remastered, rather than the HD. The problem is, as we move on, movie making, just like video game making, is less and less about the actual gameplay and the content, and it's more about the presentation. And the problem is they're focused on presentation more than they're focused on writing, more than they're focused on coherency. And that's ultimately what's killing these films. Now, I paid top dollar to watch the movie in 3D. So between me and my girlfriend, that shit came out to like $55 with tax. So the question you'd probably say is, oh, well, was it worth it? If you're a Star Wars fan of any level, I'd have to say, yeah, the film was worth it to see. But you're in for some serious disappointment. Especially if you were disappointed by Force Awakens, this film might at first make you feel a little bit better, but the problem is you're still in for some serious disappointment. I personally like the bad characters in these films, especially the unbeatable ones, the ones that are all powerful. And you were disappointed by the lack of information you had about the background of these new characters in the last film, Force Awakens. Oh, you're going to be really upset about what happens to the main guys in this film. I mean, it's a shame that I guess that's what happens when it gets directed by 2 different people or something, or written by 2 different people. But I'm just very, very taken aback when I look and I see one of these things that people need to understand when they're making these movies is you have to not kill off your bad guys. If you kill your bad guys and they don't have longevity, it's like nobody takes you seriously. They don't take your film seriously because the problem is it's too neat and it's too clean and it ends. It's just like when you look at Darth Vader. Darth Vader freaking lasted basically 6 movies. They started from when he was a boy, which they should not have, and they took him all the way to the fact he's an old man and he gets redemption with his son. And that pretty much actually helped seal his character into history, that he wasn't really a bad person. It's just that he had a really rough life and turned to the dark side, etc., etc. But this guy, Snoke, this guy was like pure evil, master manipulator, genius extraordinaire. And the way this movie treated him, it doesn't give you the answers that you want. And just a couple of scenes about his past could have solved or could have given us enough to imagine where this guy came from and what he was all about. But they didn't do that. And that's where it goes wrong. See, the problem is the Star Wars films were at their best when they forced you to use your imagination. Force Awakens, there were parts of it that were okay. Like, for instance, when Finn was getting his ass kicked by a stormtrooper, that shit made me love the movie, even though the movie had lots and lots of problems. But when you go back, you look at the first film, Phantom Menace, of the trilogy, and you look at that film and you see how they had to try to science up the whole force and talk about midi-chlorians and this bullshit. It was like, guys, leave this shit to imagination. I mean, it's supposed to be basically about religion. You don't have to prove anything to us. If you say that the guy can pick up a jet fighter with his mind, I'll believe you if you film it well. If you're showing me that this guy can choke the shit out of people with his hands and his mind, I'll believe you. You don't have to explain it. And that's the real problem. It was like the things that should not have been explained, they go into detail on. The things that needed to be explained, they don't explain. And I just have to say, it's like I had higher expectations of this film, and some of them were actually met. But the problem is now they got another one coming. So you mean to tell me now you wait a year and you're going to see Star Trek 9, or you wait a year or two and you're going to see Star Wars 9. And that's the thing. It's like at this point, Disney has got like one of the biggest cash cows ever. They'll be making these shitty Battlefront games, and they'll be charging you up the ass for them, especially now that net neutrality's dead. They'll be making videos. They'll be making made-for-TV videos. They'll be making cartoons. They've got the ultimate franchise. And the thing about it is, despite the violent nature of this franchise, it'll easily end up on television networks for children. So basically all this is to them at this point is a cash cow. So all I can say is the first three films, the New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, those will never be topped by anything else that these people come up with. Now, I know that there's a new audience out there. I know that there's a young audience, Generation Z, and then after Generation Z, God knows what will be next. And I understand that they think that the movies that they see are the absolute best ever, but I've been watching movies, sci-fi movies, since '81. So I'm sorry, but I'm not impressed by half. I'm just not impressed. And then the other sad thing is that you go to the movie theaters now, all you can see is these goddamn Star Wars movies. And it's a Star Wars movie every single year, and they're starting to treat it like Call of Duty. And if it's not a Star Wars movie, it's the penultimate film type for people who've lost all imagination, the superhero movie. There's like 3 superhero movies coming out this year. There's like Black Panther, another Avengers movies, they're fighting Thanos. There'll probably be another X-Men. I don't know. Maybe there will. Or another Guardians of the Galaxy. It's like, at this point, these writers have given up, and all they're doing is they're looking through comic books trying to figure out what to plagiarize. And that's the proper word, what to plagiarize. And that's just it. And at this point, I'm just bored. I'm personally, you know, some people like to complain. Oh, yeah, why are you complaining? But I'm bored with these games. I'm bored with these movies. It's just there's nothing new. And everything that comes out that's new sucks. and that's just the issue. So as for Star Wars, it's like, that's my little rant. It's like, I'm pretty sure if you see it, depending upon your age, you might think it's the best thing since sliced bread. You might think that it sucks as bad as being addicted to opioids. I really don't know. But all I can say is that I really wish I could sit through the alpha stage of these movies so I could tell them what to leave in and what to take out. But for the time being, it's like you're just stuck. You're just absolutely stuck. So I guess now we just got to wait for the preview trailer for Star Wars 9. And then I guess after that, it'll be Star Wars 10, Rogue 2, or Darth Vader's grandkids, or I don't know. I just don't know. It's just they killed me, basically.